Hello and welcome into episode 24 of the Stomp the Bus podcast. My name is Mark Harris, coming to you with my wonderful co-host Colton Dodgson. A lot of stuff going on today. It's early signing period. We've had a wave of transfers coming in, some ASU guys transferring out, potential news on the Pac-12 TV deal. So a lot going on.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you
thanks for
say?
calling me wonderful, Mark. I don't want to just glaze over that. I know it's been a while since I was here with you. You got some new digs. You're in your is that your childhood home?
Yep. Back in Tacoma, Washington.
Beautiful. You beat Daniel Ngata there by a week or so, but
Yeah, and Joe
um,
Moore too.
yeah, well, it's good to see you in your old stomping grounds. So yeah, hope the homeland is treating you well, Mark.
It's been a nice change of pace. For sure. But we got ASU football to talk about, and boy, Dillingham and his staff have put in a lot of work. ASU has 32 commits. 32 commits, which is that's high school and transfer portal combined. So just just they've been just putting the groundwork in everywhere. They've been getting a bunch of high school guys from Texas, two defensive linemen from Zachary, Louisiana, one of whom is a four-star. Uh, all sorts of transfer. I mean, we've talked about. Well, maybe we have. I don't know. Jacob Conover's coming in. Um, FCS running back Cam Scatabo from Sacramento State. And if you guys haven't watched him, I recommend some of his highlights because he looks really good. And then probably the most notable incoming transfer is Notre Dame quarterback Drew Pyne. So it's
Yeah.
a lot of guys coming in. Dillingham definitely had to uh, get more players on the roster and just build depth.
Yeah, and it definitely looks like he's got it. It seems like every couple of days you're seeing new guys making that commitment, and that's extremely promising this early on, right? It seems like I don't know. This is just extremely an extremely positive development. Obviously, when I saw the name Drew Pyne, obviously Notre Dame quarterback, he was somewhat prominent throughout the year. Obviously, with Notre Dame kind of bouncing in and out of whatever range they were in this year. I think they opened the year at number 5 in the nation,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
and just bounced and then kind of picked it up there at the end. But he was probably one of the more notable names on the quarterback transfer circuit, I
Market.
guess.
Yeah.
If you're going through and looking at top 10 lists, he's probably on most of those, right? So getting somebody to of that sort of, I don't want to say like prestige or anything like that, but somebody that notable, I think is the right way to put it. That's definitely positive. And then you go through this list and you see guys transferring in from like Texas, Prince Dorba transferring in from
Yep.
Texas, and Wisconsin, and just Notre Dame, obviously.
Two guys
Some
from Cal.
prominent, yeah, some Cal guys too.
Wazoo
Um,
linebacker.
right, like prominent programs. Obviously, you've
Yep.
got, and then obviously BYU guys too. You mentioned
Yep.
Conover. I think I said that right. Yeah, Jacob
Yep.
Conover coming into, and then Tate Romney. So BYU is another one of those prominent programs, and guys are choosing to come here, which is again a very positive development and something that's it's good that it's happening this early, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the most surprising part is ASU's already becoming somewhat desirable to these people. So
Right.
and these players, which is great.
Yeah. So according to 247 Sports, I always call it 247. I think it's 24/7 Sports.
That would make more sense, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that I just read it as 247 because there's not a slash, but
that's
it's
okay. I think either way, people will know what you're talking about.
exact. Um, yeah, according to them, ASU is 55 overall. But a lot of that's just because pretty much all of them, at least according to 247, 24/7, are 3-star guys. But that's fine. Like this is a class that he's had. How long has Dillingham even been on the job? It's what, the 21st, so like.
I feel like a little over a month.
No, because I don't even think it's. When was the Territorial Cup? Like the 28th of November? Like.
Oh, that's true.
So it's been 3
Less
weeks
than a
because
month.
today's the 21st, like 3.5 weeks officially. I mean, that's that's a lot of people to get in. And again, not all of these, like, I'm gonna say this because there's always the skeptical fan, for anything. It's like they're gonna see that aren't any 4-star guys, which it would be great. I mean, maybe by the end, we're recording this at 3:30 Arizona time on early signing day, so there could be stuff that happens during the show, after the show, whatever. But it's not like the most glamorous class in terms of star ranking, but you need players. And Dillingham and his staff got into this so late in the game too.
Right. And I feel like there's a ton of depth in this class
Yes.
too. Like you said, the ranking might be a little lower because you've got a lot of 3-star guys, but there's some 4-stars sprinkled in there too. I've seen some guys like that. But the fact that they have 31 guys coming in, I think that's what you said it was, 31, right?
32, according
32.
to 24/7. Yeah.
Regard 247, right, Mark? Regardless,
7-2-4.
a ton of depth, which I think is extremely important. And then something else that stood out to me too, just in this 3 weeks since he's been on the job, is he kind of talked about his dedication to bringing in people that want to be here. If somebody wants to leave, he's not going to beg them to stay, that sort of thing. And you see that happening with his staff too. Bringing in people that he's worked with in the past or people who served as mentors to him. That's always the biggest sticking point with a young head coach or somebody who's a first-time head coach, who needs that experience around whatever it is. People always talk about bringing in trusted advisors and people who can help the coach grow and things like that. And that seems to be what he's doing too. And furthermore, he's bringing in a lot of prominent. I mean, Sean Aguano is still on staff. Jason Mons is coming over from Saguaro. It seems like they're really, really trying to revitalize that in-state recruiting approach, and become more prominent from the state in the state landscape, I guess, which I think is extremely important too.
Very important, and you've really seen that in the transfer, the transfers coming back in.
Right. Some in-state guys.
The Carlos Brooks Chandler player, Crew Jackson. I think he was from comes in from
Kansas State.
Tristan Monday, I want to believe, was Saguaro, comes in from Wisconsin. Jake Smith, we didn't mention him. He's been around the block, Texas and USC, huge high school recruit coming back to Arizona. So obviously Conover and Romney you mentioned. So that's a big deal. And then, but I think another thing that's important is it's not just solely former Arizona high school coaches that are recruiting too. Like you bring in Samples and Carrington, who have really looked like great additions already. You bring in Brian Ward as the Wazoo defensive coordinator, and I spoke about this last episode. Like Wazoo had one of the better defenses in the Pac-12. So to bring in someone like him is a great sign. And Dillingham, when asked about it, the reasoning he gave was, well, I went up against him and his defense was a pain in the butt. It's like that's the exact right mindset you want,
Right. Exactly. Wazoo's defense, I mean, take the Apple Cup out of it, but Wazoo's defense for the most part was pretty stout all year long too. So
it was like top 3 in the conference. And by the way, like it's freaking tough to recruit to Wazoo. Like, like just even when like things are going great, there's no like, not in the first year of a coaching search or whatever. Like it's just tough. It's very isolated. And to have that kind of a defense is just impressive. And I mean, I'm impressed with 2 things that they've really hit Texas. 7 guys total coming in from Texas, and they haven't ignored the junior college route. Like that's big. So many ASU players, so many good ASU players in the past came from the JUCO route,
Right. No, you see a lot of very talented
Yeah.
players in any program who come through the JUCO route. So it's good to get those
Well, but
guys
not
in
in
there
any
as well.
program though, because a lot of programs can't even take them because of the academic stuff or whatever it may be. But
Right.
that's why it's
Programs who
important for
are
ASU to leverage its advantages of, not being, the the most exclusive school in the world and getting these guys in. Like they
right.
should
So
use
just
every
being able
advantage
to
that they
like
have at this
peer
point.
into that.
Yeah. Um, and apparently, like some of these guys were pretty sought after. So, East LA College offensive tackle listed at 6'7", 315. Maxwell E. Henachor, I'm probably pronounced that wrong. Elijah O'Neal, Butte College. I think that's where Aaron Rodgers started. Uh, Edge, 6'4", 245. Um, there's one more down here. Cal Scott, Riverside Community College, offensive tackle, 6'5", 320. Like, yeah, they may not have the like acclaim, but clearly they have the size, and going to the JUCO route, like not all these guys are going to pan out, obviously, but it's just when you're in this stage of rebuilding the program, it's just you need to have depth.
Definitely.
Because I mean ASU did. I don't even think they had a full like 85-man roster last year, or whatever the limit is. So
Yeah, it did seem a little light for
yeah,
sure. I'm just looking through these
and
groups
so
real
and,
quick.
and here's the thing: we're just looking at the 24/7 Sports ranking, but according to Rivals, they have two guys that are considered 4 stars. They have so far at least Ashley Williams from Zachary, Louisiana. He's considered a 4 star on Rivals, and Sean Russ, a safety out of Fort Myers, Florida, is also considered a 4 star at Rivals. So, that's impressive just to get those two guys from not your footprint, from Florida and Louisiana. Uh,
Right.
and ASU, especially in the Todd Graham area, I feel like they actually did recruit Louisiana pretty well because Louisiana like isn't that far from Arizona compared to like the rest of the South. Uh, so I think that's good. And having two guys, because they have two guys from the same high school in Louisiana. Yeah, two defensive linemen, Landon Thomas from Zachary, and Ashley Williams, and I think that's great. Like, it's just encouraging to see, just especially after the previous staff like didn't recruit at all. They had like 8 commits. Now you have 32, and a lot of them, I think they're like, I don't know. I think there only is one holdover from the previous, and that would be CJ Fight from Texas. It's just, again, like, it's not the most sexiest class in terms of star ranking, but it's a really good start for Dillingham.
Yeah, and I was just kind of looking through this 247. Now you got me saying it. This ranking list or whatever, and the name Jake Smith really jumped out at me. 2019 class, committed to Texas. He's kind of bounced around a little bit, but he was the eighth rated wide receiver in the country when he came out. 4 star, 49th rated recruit according to 24/7 in the country. Bounced around a little bit, went from Texas to USC, and now he's at ASU this year, which is pretty interesting. At the very least, a name to watch. But to get somebody who had that pedigree coming out of high school is pretty interesting too. And again, Notre Dame prep, an Arizona kid. So
Right.
um, just rising, building up the reputation in the minds of those recruits is pretty big.
Yep. Oh, apparently just another kid. This guy, Josiah Cox, signed with ASU. So again, we're gonna miss. San Diego, California, Lincoln defensive back Josiah Cox announced moments ago that he will play for Arizona State. I don't know exactly where it says he is in terms of a star ranking. I'd imagine he's a 3-star. But again, just another guy. Good to have. There's one thing I'm looking for, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of covered it in terms of like the big picture with his recruiting class. One guy I wanted to kind of focus in on is this cornerback from, because if you look at where these guys are coming from, it's mostly Arizona, Louisiana, California. You got the one guy from Florida, Texas, the one guy from Florida. But then there's this guy, Keontae Bradley from Mansfield, Ohio. And the reason why this guy sticks out to me is because he is like track speed fast. He's a cornerback. For some reason, like he wasn't getting Power 5 offers, which a lot of these guys that ASU were getting, like they had like Group of 5 offers and Power 5 offers, like they're 3-star guys. So it's not, again, like they're not super sought after because most of those guys have already committed and made their decision. But yeah, here's what I'm talking about. Keontae Bradley, 10.8 in the 100-meter dash. It's freaking very fast. 21.
That's very.
Yeah, 21.7 seconds in the 200 meters. So, and he's 6'2". So sure, he's not a 4-star, but those are the type of guys you want to get if you're recruiting, if you're not going to bring in like the super sexy class, because that's a guy who can develop into something better just because he has the physical tools to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what you want. You want to bring in guys that you can mold, guys who have that raw talent. And if you're able to do that and you're able to help some of these guys reach that potential, it only makes it more enticing for in this era of the transfer portal to bring in more and more guys and build up those classes. I'm excited for I know a lot of this has been transfer stuff. I'm trying to look. Oh yeah, right here. Okay, I'm seeing it now. Even the high school kids look pretty good too. So, I mean, I'm excited to see where they go from here. It looks like a pretty solid foundational class that you can build on, right? Especially we talked about it. He's been in here for 3.5 weeks, Kenny Dillingham. So to come out and do something like this right off the bat is pretty promising for sure.
Right. And again, 24/7 isn't even showing everything. They also brought in a defensive lineman from Idaho State, who I'm sure Charlie Regal, former coach there, now on staff, had a good evaluation on if he's coming up to the Power 5. So that's good. And then the one thing I'm looking for here is it's just so many players, like as an ASU fan, I have barely even been paying attention to recruiting basically the past whole year because there was nothing going on. It was like they had like 8 or 9 guys committed beforehand, and it's just so different now. Like that's kind of the thing that's just bouncing around in my head. It's like, even though, and I get it, everyone's undefeated in the off season, so like take this hope with a big grain of salt because we still have to play the games, and they have a decently tough schedule coming up. So, but the difference is no one's expecting them. Like if you go 7-5 next year, then like that's perfect. Like it's the first year of a head coaching tenure, and I think that I think that just building the depth in this class is super important, and I'm just excited to see what happens with this staff with a whole nother year of recruiting and getting more connected in the Valley, because a lot of these guys like over the weekend, I mean, they had a huge recruiting event in Tempe, and they were doing pretty unique things. Like they had like a scavenger hunt like around the ASU campus, and I think doing something like that, like that'll be a memorable experience for a recruit. Like, oh, we like instead of just being walking around the facility is like normal. The staff they did something a little more, and maybe it won't even matter. But like, I just like the creativity and the effort. That's the thing. The effort is very obvious.
Maybe we'll set up a little scavenger hunt for you, Mark, to go on. I'm sure you'd enjoy that.
I don't think I would actually.
Okay. Well, I agree with you from the creative standpoint, right? You definitely want to stand out in the mind of a recruit, and if a scavenger hunt is the way to do that, if that's your speed, Mark, then definitely, man. But I agree. It's thinking outside the box. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and Dillingham at I think in an interview or something, he mentioned like I've recruited other places, and you kind of at other places sometimes you like don't show them everything because whatever, there's like an undesirable element of the school or whatever. Like you steer them away from I don't want to say bad parts, but just not as exciting parts. The thing that Dillingham said, it's like you don't have to worry about that here at ASU. Like you can go anywhere. And like
Right.
I think that's great that like yes, go look around the entire beautiful ASU campus. Like,
Go to Geno's.
Go to the Boulevard 1900.
Yes. Absolutely.
Another guy that apparently a lot of the Devil's Digest, Sun Devil source, this guy from Red Mountain, Lennox Lawson, defensive back. He's regarded as a very good athlete, 3-star recruit. These are guys that like the previous staff. It's like they didn't even care about recruiting Arizona.
Yeah.
And I get that not every Arizona recruit is going to end up being the next Todd Heap or Zach Miller or whatever former Arizona high school recruit that turned into a great ASU player. But it's just it builds goodwill among the high school coaching community, for one. And you don't want to like think of how dumb ASU looks for just totally like not even trying on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I did see that tweet from Brad Sesmat. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to just like Arizona is too at this point now too prominent of a high school
Right.
football pipeline to just completely ignore your backyard. I almost understand like from the fan perspective of like, are we really going to be in the mix for any of these guys? Like even it's just one of those states where it's like all of these guys are going to choose like the big players and everything like that. But there's a reason they do is because ASU's never really been like in the mix in terms of that. Obviously, they've had better eras, I guess, where in-state recruiting was much more significant, but not in the minds of high school students now, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to start to rebuild that because you're missing out on so much talent by completely ignoring this pipeline. And I think we're trending toward an approach based on the hirings that Dillingham has made and bringing in all of these prominent figures from his past, which is highly predicated in the Arizona high school football scene, but also prominent figures from the high school football team scene as it stands right now, right? With Guano and Mons and all of that. So I think it's trending in the right direction, but the era of just completely ignoring the backyard talent has to end. And I think we're going to see that end finally. I don't know how much more prominent they're going to get in the minds of high school students now, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
But at the very least, they're trying, which is much more than any of the other coaches have done, I guess, just Herm Edwards, which is much more than what Herm Edwards did, I guess.
And apparently at the end of the Graham era, it was like just super chaotic too, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Good old CTG. I want to talk about some of the transfers going in and out of the program. So let's talk about some of the guys that have left. I saw today Paul Tyson is committed to Clemson,
Yeah.
likely as a backup there. But good for him. I mean, I just feel sorry for these guys that transferred here, like at this time last year, just entering into just such a crap show. So good for him. Emory Jones transferring to Cincinnati, which I hope he'll be able to play there, man. That would be a good bookend for his college career because he's kind of bounced around, starting at beginning at Florida, ASU, and now Cincinnati. So hopefully that works out for him. Who are some other guys that have left? The specialists. Eddie Chaplitsky going off to USC. It seems like an odd place for a punter to go because, like, how many times is USC even going to punt?
Right. Well, I don't know. It's a place to chill, I guess. That'd be I feel like it depends on your perspective as a punter. Is it better to have to punt a lot, or is it better to have to just like never punt? You punt in practice and then just hang out on Saturday. Like, I don't know. If I was a punter, that wouldn't be the worst destination. But granted, I'm not. So, and there's a reason I'm not. But I guess it just depends on your perspective as a punter, Mark. We should do an episode where we dive in on the psychology of a punter and like, is it better to have to punt a lot? Do you want to go out and do that a lot? Or would you rather play for, like you said it, like USC or like the Chiefs, where you're just never punting?
Yeah.
You get paid to not do anything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's true. You could think about it that way. That should be. I mean, he was their first team all Pac-12 punter. So, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the NIL deal that maybe USC is a great special teams NIL earmarked section of their NIL collective. So, I don't know. But two guys transferred to Washington. Defensive lineman Joe Moore, and then today it was announced that Daniel Ngata went up to Washington. So that's the Ngata one's interesting because he had previously tweeted out stuff about Burrito Express. Imagine that's going to be a done or a no longer official NIL deal with him, but I'm sure he'll get something up in Seattle. So those are two guys gone. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people. There are definitely guys still in the portal. Isaiah Johnson's in the portal. Omar Norman Lott's in the portal. Doesn't look like Elijah Badger's in the portal, though, and that's huge.
That's really big.
Yeah, and we know and Jalen Conyers is coming back, too, which is enormous, especially with how Dillingham used tight ends last year in the Oregon offense. Him and Messiah Swinson as well.
Yeah, that's big. Messiah Swinson had moments where I remember talking about him. I think it was near the beginning of the year where we thought he was going to be massive, and then he kind of fizzled out a little bit. How much of a product of the situation was that? But like you said, if anybody's going to use hopefully Dillingham's going to be able to sort of tap into what we saw early on out of Messiah Swinson. But he could definitely be a weapon in this offense as well.
Yeah, so that's good. But they had two guys enter the portal and come back. Anthony Cooper, defensive end. That's big. Any of these linemen that are in the portal that come back, even if they're not like superstar players, that's still really good to have back. And then probably the most significant portal entrant and then returnee is BJ Green. So. And I think he had like 5 sacks last year as a freshman, and it's good to keep someone like that on the team, obviously. And maybe read between the lines on these. It's showing that ASU's NIL collective, which was previously like non-existent, is a little more sturdy than it once was.
Definitely, yeah. I think I even was driving the other day and heard like an ad for the Sun Angel Collective on the radio, and it's
nice.
Yeah, they're really trying to market that at the very least, which is good. And I don't think that this new staff is going to be like go into this age sort of kicking and screaming. We've already seen that they've hit the ground running, and I hope that they adapt to all of the nuances of modern college football recruiting, and I think that they're going to.
You mean not every college football staff was super on board with NIL? I couldn't think of a previous ASU staff that was like that.
No, they were just into developing players.
I still can't believe Ray Anderson said that publicly. I just I don't want to talk about Ray Anderson right now. Oh my gosh, that was just so stupid. For someone who is like an objectively smart person to go out and say that just blows my mind. So yeah, I just, again, still, you still have to play the games. Everyone's undefeated in the offseason, all this, but just good momentum at least, and there's still time for more transfers.
Mark.
Yeah, and there's still, there's still more time for transfers to come in as well. So the early signing day is today, December 21st, and then there's the one in February. But since the early signing day is like basically become the de facto signing day, so it's just apparently like ASU's recruiting class was in like the 100s of all college football. They were in the 100s, and now I think their high school recruiting. Well, they just got another guy, so it has to update. It'll probably finish like low 50s, like in the 58 range, and that's that's not anything to. Right? What?
I said that's a pretty solid climb.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not anything to write home about, but it's also like, oh, like you're in at least like you're among Power 5 teams. You're not way down in the hundreds, which just blows my mind. I know that there's the potential sanctions and everything, but it's just that it's insane that just what place they were in. Just
that's way too low.
Yeah.
For my liking.
For mine as well. Do you want to talk about Drew Pyne? I know we touched on him a little bit, but what?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch him play too much, but I mean, 4-star coming out of high school, played quarterback for Notre Dame this season. They went 8-4, obviously.
So he started the year as the backup.
Yeah, started as the backup, played a little bit. I think he finished with 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Yep. So didn't turn the ball over too much, which is always good. I tend to err on the side of that's a positive thing when a quarterback doesn't throw interceptions. There's some groundbreaking analysis for you, but played well for Notre Dame on a big stage, right? That's a pretty prominent college football program. So went through and looked at some top transfer lists and stuff, and he seemed to be, for quarterbacks, top 10 on most of those lists.
Yeah.
So to get a guy in here like that who was prominent coming out of high school, has accomplished a little bit at the collegiate level in terms of individual performance, especially, and this is what we talked about a couple of weeks ago when it came to looking for a transfer quarterback. I was tending to think that those guys who were in the portal looking at Dillingham would look at Dillingham and think this is going to be a pretty appealing destination,
right?
Because of what he did with Bo Nix. And when Drew Pyne committed to play at Arizona State, that was one of the prominent takeaways from sort of his statement about why he came here. Was it stood out to him what Kenny Dillingham did with Bo Nix last season. So if we were hoping that would play some sort of role in getting one of those transfer portal quarterbacks into the program, and it seems to have done that. So if Kenny Dillingham can get something pretty prominent out of Drew Pyne, who I believe he still has 3 years of eligibility left too.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, if he can, I mean, obviously Bo Nix turnaround was pretty substantial, going from a fringe Heisman contender, or going from Auburn to a fringe Heisman contender. Not that he was very bad at Auburn, but he was never at the level that he played at this season. I think that's that's kind of like, I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he turns Drew Pyne into a pretty prominent college football quarterback. And then at that point, I think ASU becomes a very desirable quarterback destination. So there's a lot. The stakes are, it's not like make or break or anything by any means, but there's some pretty prominent stakes at play here with this Drew Pyne transfer, I think.
Yeah. And so the thing, how I'm looking at the Drew Pyne entering the program is, I think that he's not like I don't think he's like some like program savior type of quarterback. Like
No.
he did start the year at Notre Dame as a backup. So let's just keep that in mind. There's a lot of excitement among ASU fans right now, but let's just keep that in mind. But like you said, 22 touchdowns to 2 picks. Had some good games against North Carolina, BYU, and granted, those aren't the best defenses of all time, but he will be playing in the Pac-12. So let's remember that. I just think that it's good to have, he's solid, if nothing else, like he's not, like, would you rather have Drew Pyne or Graham Mertz from Wisconsin? Because Graham Mertz is reportedly going to transfer to Florida, and I'd rather have Drew Pyne because he is not like Drew. How tall are you, Colton? You're like 6'3"?
Probably like 6'1", 6'2", something like that.
Okay, well, he is shorter than you. Like Drew Pyne's like my height. He's 5'11", and he's not like the most athletic guy in the world. Whereas like Graham Mertz has more better measurables, but Drew Pyne I trust to run an offense better. And if it ends up being Drew Pyne starting at quarterback for ASU, then I'm not like expecting him to be like a Heisman contender, but I'll be like, okay, like this guy's like solid, he's competent. And when you combine that with the Dillingham offense, that could be pretty interesting, And again, and this is all under the expectation of like a 7-5, 8-4 season would be fantastic next year type of thinking. So like this is every program, there are different life cycles or different expectations. So we're just coming out of the Herm Edwards era and hoping let's just get back on the tracks type of thing. So, and I think Pyne is capable of that. But here's the other thing, like if Pyne doesn't win the job, or if it's Conover or Trenton Bourguet, who's staying on the team, like I'm good with that too, like and Dillingham, like that's been his approach, is like, we're just going to bring guys in, and he hasn't made promises to people, which I think that's great to do as a coach, is don't promise anything to kids, because we've all been that age. You want the promise, but it's probably better to hear, hey, like, we're not going to promise you anything, and then have that be the truth, as opposed to, oh, you're going to be the starter, and then turns out you're not going to be,
Right. Yeah, you definitely don't want to make promises you can't keep.
Right. And so I'm sure Pyne knows that going in. I mean, obviously these guys are all competitors. He's probably looking at, Bourguet and Conover and the rest of the guys on the roster, and thinking, okay, like I can beat these guys out, So, and ASU, another transfer I didn't mention going out is Finn Collins, the quarterback. He's leaving, which makes sense. Like, but when you bring in these quarterbacks, like some of them are just going to leave. Like these guys want to play. So even though he's a younger guy, they still have Dalen McLemore and Bennett Meredith on the roster. So they have enough quarterbacks. I would not anticipate them grabbing another quarterback out of the transfer portal. So in terms of a numbers perspective, they're covered there. And then running backs, I mean, this Cam Scatterbo guy, I'm excited to have him, man. I mean, I showed you some of the highlights. Like, what are your thoughts on him coming in?
I mean, anytime you can get one of the most, I think he was probably one of the most desired running backs in the portal. Mm-hmm. You've seen guys who make that jump from, the FCS ranks to the FBS ranks and everything like that. He seems, obviously he's on an upward trajectory, right? And anytime you can get a guy like that who is able to light up the FCS the way that he was is extremely important. And again, Dillingham's an offensive-minded guy. He's going to find ways that he can use all of the pieces at his disposal. We talked about it with hopefully his ability to get something out of his tight ends with Conyers and Swinson and guys like that. So bringing in a running back like him, I think, is extremely important. And it's going to be interesting to see what Dillingham is able to do. It just continues to build up on that point of like a deep recruiting class with a lot of strength and a lot of different pieces where it's like, oh, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting. And I think Scatabo is one of those guys. I mean, 3,550 rushing yards. Where was that last year?
I can't imagine he ran for 3,000
No,
yards.
no. I don't know what this is. Is this?
I think he had like 1,300 yards last year, if I remember.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like 3,000 rushing yards in a season. What? 42 touchdowns. It's probably a career at some point. But this little highlight video,
That
like
would be insane.
What this is. No, I know that's like Madden numbers, man. But yeah, I'm trying to. Either way, obviously an extremely productive career at Sacramento State. He's moving on. I think the coach at Sac State just got hired to be Stanford's head coach.
Yep.
So he's moving on, and it'll be cool. It'll be cool to see what he does here. Obviously, ASU has a pretty solid track record in the last couple of years of bringing in running backs who are able to produce immediately. And the guy who was kind of helping with that with Sean Aguano is still on staff. So he's coming to a solid situation, and maybe seeing what other guys are able to do here helped him make that decision. So we'll see what he does. But yeah, I'm excited to have him. It always seems like there's a running back coming in that we're excited about every off season. So that's pretty cool.
And we're not even mentioning Tevin White. You know, he was the only 4-star brought in the last class, and he looked pretty good when given his opportunities last year. And big body guy too. So like, I'm excited about him. Obviously, with Ngata leaving, that means more carries for Scatabo, White, and to Carlos Brooks as well. So I'm looking at Scatabo's stats last year. 195 carries for 1,372 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7 yards per carry. That is insane. Like,
yeah, that's nuts.
I get that it's the FCS, so like that has to be taken into account. But 7 yards per carry is just insane average. And then he also 31 catches for 371 yards and 3 touchdowns too. So like, do it all type of guy. Excited about having him on the team. Yeah. So, excuse me. You know, I've said it, you know, probably 3 times already on this podcast, but just having just a bunch of guys coming in is just such a good reset, you know?
Definitely. Guys choosing to be here.
Yeah.
Like you said, you keep talking about the depth, and I think that's the most important part, is being able to fill out a team and having multiple guys who you feel comfortable with contributing, and all of those things. I think it's pivotal for the first year in sort of a complete rebuild, right, or a complete overhaul of your program, because that's essentially what this is. And who knows how long that's going to take, but right now it seems like they're on the right track, and I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. So overall, things are looking good, at least in our view, for ASU. Probably going to finish like low 50s in the high school recruiting, and then probably maybe like right now they're 53 overall when you include transfers. So in the 50 range overall, and then it says their transfer rank is 13. A lot of that is just due to the volume, but
which is smart. Play to your strengths right now.
Yeah, exactly. So a solid foundation is being built. In again in a short amount of time, which that's the most impressive thing to me. One more thing I wanted to touch on before we talk about the potential Pac-12 TV deal that's coming up. Since the last time you were on this podcast, the Colorado Buffaloes have made a coaching hire, bringing in Coach Prime to Boulder. And I have one question for you, Colton. Are you jealous of this as an ASU fan?
Jealous, not, you know, it's weird because I feel like we couldn't have a better coach for this program than Dillingham, I feel like. Like, I think if it was anybody else, I would be a little jealous. I would be a little jealous that Colorado got Deion Sanders and everything like that. But I think Dillingham is exactly what this program needs.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I've seen out of him so far is like, why would we want Deion Sanders? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel content. I'm not like, oh, that would have been so cool to have that. I think we're exactly where we need to be. So if it works out for Colorado, good. But I think I feel very comfortable about where we're at with our situation. So I'm not trying to look at, you know, the grass on the other side or anything like that. I think Colorado's in good shape, and I think we're in good shape too. So
Right. Well, it's definitely like the thing with Deion that Deion does provide is he's going to have more high-level talent coming in right away. But we don't know what it's going to be like for Deion when. I mean, he's a good coach, and they've assembled a good staff too. I'll give him that. Like they got the Kent State head coach to be their offensive coordinator, and he was a guy that was rumored to be like in head coaching discussions. So I think from the Colorado like standpoint, because the thing with Deion is I just don't. How long is he going to stay at Colorado before? Mike Norvell gets fired at Florida State or some other job comes open, right? Like, I just feel like if you're Colorado, you're making this hire knowing that he might stay for like 3 years.
right.
And that's why I like the hire of Sean Lewis as the OC, because then if Deion does leave, they can just promote him to be the head coach. But I guess I'm a little jealous of it from the hype perspective and just the immediate talent coming in perspective. But
Right.
like you said with Dillingham, like having Dillingham makes me less jealous than I otherwise would be if they hired Tom Herman or if they hired who's the guy they were considering. I don't even remember all the guys they considering because it felt so quickly that they were going to go to Dillingham. But
wasn't Jim Mora on that list?
Jim Mora, yeah. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, if we had hired Jim Mora, and I know that Jim Mora just took UConn to a bowl game, and that does mean something. But if they hired Jim Mora and then Colorado hired Deion, then we would have a whole different tone on this podcast right now. But who was the guy who was at Virginia? Bronco Mendenhall too. Like even though I like Bronco Mendenhall as a coach, I'd be much more. And I mean, maybe Dillingham could be a terrible coach. Like again, we don't know. But it just feels like Dillingham. Like it feels like he's going to be here for a bit. He clearly loves the program. Like he was crying at the press conference.
Right.
And
like, with a guy like Dillingham, if he does well, it's like he's talking about this being his dream job. I guess barring anything extreme, like what would be better to him? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
If this is
like
your
Alabama
dream
comes
job,
open and they offer him the job, then sure, like maybe he takes that. But that, I mean, who knows? Who even knows if that's a reality? But
but even then, I feel like if Alabama is offering Kenny Dillingham a job, ASU is going to be fine. Like he has built ASU into a
exactly,
team.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a fantastic thing for ASU because that means that you've been good. So,
Right.
yeah, but I will say this: I think it's good for the league. Like, it's good that Deion's in the Pac-12. I think it's just adds some more interest. I mean, think of how much Colorado football has been talked about in the past few weeks. After going 1-11 and being very close to going 0-12, like that's just good all around, even if it's all just hype. And another thing, like after the Herm Edwards era, where like I feel like there was a lot of hype without a lot of like backing behind it. And maybe the Deion, like maybe that's what's going to happen in Colorado too. Like who knows? But I do think your point of if we didn't hire Dillingham, we would have felt much more jealous about that hire. But we'll see. It should be interesting. And the thing with Deion, like he's not really like so far. A lot of the recruits he's getting aren't like from the West Coast either, so it's not really affecting the Pac-12 footprint just yet, anyway. So. And the other thing that I just find crazy, and I know that this is what he's been doing at Jackson State, is just having the film crew with him all the time. Like,
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty crazy. I loved how and who knows, maybe this is just Travis Hunter kind of like, but it felt like there was a role reversal kind of, or like, do you remember when Deion Sanders was like, yeah, Travis Hunter's gonna be joining me real soon, like all that stuff? Do you remember when he said that?
I remember he when he said his kid would come, and it's
Yeah,
official.
so there was a quote that Deion Sanders said that Travis Hunter would be joining him real soon. And then Travis Hunter put out a video and he's like, well, I'll go if it's what's best for me, but I'm going to look at other stuff. Like, I'm not committing to that right now.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was kind of like, it's so wild that a kid was able to say, like, okay, thanks, Deion Sanders, but I'm going to take a little bit more time on this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Travis Hunter has
it's
so many options. Like he could go literally anywhere.
yeah, exactly. Which who knows? Maybe he does end up at Colorado, but it was kind of wild that it was like it was the student putting the ice or the putting the water on the fire, so to speak, where Deion Sanders is like, yeah, he's definitely coming here, and everybody's trying to like break that Travis Hunter's committing to Colorado or whatever, and then Travis Hunter's like, no, pump the brakes. It just felt like how is he going to be the one telling Deion Sanders to relax? You know what I'm saying? I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yep. So we'll see. Again, it's going to be exciting. I'm happy. I think Colorado made a great hire because even if Deion crashes and burns, what, like Colorado's just going to go back to sucking like they were before?
Right.
Like, there's literally no downside.
Yeah, it's swinging for the fences, and that's what you have to do if you're Colorado, I think.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on. Oh my gosh, coughing again. Just getting over a little cold. Yeah, I know. One thing I wanted to touch on was it was a little blurb from the Sports Business Journal on Monday from John Ourand. It's pronounced it's spelled Ourand. Probably Ourand is his last name, assuming.
Okay.
So writes for the Sports Business Journal, knows his stuff in terms of TV deals and conference partnerships and all that. And in his prediction, he had a prediction story. And this is what it says regarding the Pac-12. It says, Amazon gets Pac-12 rights. ESPN will be prepared to split the Pac-12's media rights with Amazon, but will not offer the conference significantly more than it pays the Big 12. That will lead the Pac-12 to sell almost its entire media package to Amazon for a price that is significantly high, a price that is slightly higher than what the Big 12 gets from ESPN and Fox. The Pac-12 will then carve out a handful of primetime games that it will sell to CBS. So basically, the big picture here is a lot of the Pac-12's next media deal will be with Amazon. And what do you think about that? Like,
from the fans' perspective, I love it. Like,
mm-hmm.
I have Amazon Prime. Most people do. It's not that hard to get it. Even if you're a Pac-12 fan and you're like, yeah, I want to watch these games, you get the Prime subscription and you're able to watch them. I mean, it's so much better than having all of these. Well, I guess ASU isn't really the team that's on. I guess they play on FS1 sometimes, or get the late ESPN game or whatever it is. But fans want to watch all of the games, not like 2 or 3 of the games every season. And with the Pac-12 network, you just can't. They're on maybe 4 providers. Like, those of you who have Pac-12 network are very much few and far between,
Minority.
right? Like not a lot of people are able to access it. So hearing that it's going to be on a platform that's extremely accessible, it's something where you don't necessarily have to have a cable package or anything like that. It's a streaming provider. I think that's excellent for the fan, the Pac-12 fan at least.
Yeah.
In terms of, and I agree with a lot of the responses to this. I was kind of reading through them. In terms of exposure and the casual fan who's just kind of flipping through and things like that, maybe it's not as good for the Pac-12, but for ASU, it doesn't matter as much. It's the Pac-12 as a conference when you're looking at it through the lens of being competitive with other conferences, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest downside is like the casual fan isn't going to be able to flip through channels and find a Pac-12 game as easy as they would have been. But at the same time, for Pac-12 fans, especially of teams like ASU or some of the other programs that aren't getting on ESPN as often as an Oregon or a Washington or somebody like that, I think this is great. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I can see both perspectives on it. But as an ASU fan, I'm extremely excited. I'll be able to watch. So that's good.
And there's two things that stick out to me among this potential deal with Amazon. Man, is that this would probably lead to the Pac-12 teams getting paid more per school than the Big 12. Maybe not by a lot, but it would keep you competitive with the Big 12 and the ACC. You know, is in the next tier of Power 5 conferences behind the SEC and the Big 10. And then another big deal with it is more control over kickoff times. You know, a lot of Pac-12 fans have complained about late kickoff times being the only option, or not the only option, but being very frequent. And, you know, I mean, you could argue that Christian McCaffrey lost the Heisman in 2015 because of too many late kickoff games.
Yeah, no, that was one of the bigger
Michael
trends.
Penix probably, I think UW had a lot of late games, and Michael Penix probably lost a Heisman, like, I don't think he would win it. He wouldn't have beaten Caleb Williams, but he probably would have finished higher if you were playing a little bit more games that are more accessible for the majority of the country, you know? So that is important. I hope, like, it's not going to be exclusively to Amazon. That's the big thing. You still need to have, and that the article mentions primetime games on CBS. That I like, and I just wonder if it'll just be Amazon and CBS, or Amazon, CBS, and then maybe you still have some late games on ESPN, you know, because ESPN isn't want to give up having those late games. Like, as annoying as they are, it's still the most rated thing on at that time slot, you know? So if that happens, I think that would be great. And, you know, I think that I just don't see any teams leaving, you know, in this cycle. Maybe 5 years from now or whatever they will. But I think that's what I like about it, is it's a security thing. And partnering with Amazon, yes, I get that there would be issues in terms of you wouldn't be able to flip the channel to the Amazon. You'd have to exit out of your TV app and go to Amazon. But, like, how much of a barrier is that really? You
It's
know, like,
literally not at all.
yeah, I
Like,
know.
you click the home button, you click the up arrow, and then you click the middle button. And
I
you are
know,
watching
exactly.
a game.
And I've seen,
And like they might even come up with like a separate app. There might even be like an or an Amazon Pac-12 app through Fire TV or through whatever provider,
yeah,
like where you don't even have to scroll through and find the games. It's all on one app. So, like, if that's the case, it's literally as simple as switching over to your app, which if you're not using a cable box or like a satellite box and you have them all, which I mean, I mean, I don't know a lot of people who do.
right,
Most people are on like Hulu Live or whatever it is.
right,
You're
right.
already on the Fire Stick anyway. And at which case, if you're watching a game on CBS and then the Big Ten game is about to kick off, you have to switch over to Fox anyway.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's really as simple as changing your channel as it is. I think the narrative of like the casual fan isn't going to want to switch over is being a little overblown because it's not really that hard. If you want to watch Oregon, you're going to watch Oregon.
Right. And the other thing is like the casual fan has been ignoring the Pac-12 anyway. So like
Right.
you need to do like it's important to get with Amazon just because like it's important to have more money per school. Like that cannot be understated, you know?
Definitely. And
And
it's so
so
accessible. You're giving I feel like there would be very few Pac-12 fans who would be upset with this. The
yeah.
only people that would feel if they even felt it, which I'm sure they wouldn't, are the casual fans who it's like, oh, one less game that I can switch over to on my direct TV remote. Like
Yeah. The only group, and I'm not even trying to say this is like from a rivalry perspective, is I've seen a lot of U of A fans that don't want to do this, and a few of their like media members, and because they want to go to the Big 12, they just want to go to the Big 12, which I don't understand. If I was a U of A fan, I don't understand why I'd want to go to the Big 12 because they want to go for basketball reasons. But if you stay in the Big 12 in the Pac-12 as U of A, you will be the undisputed best basketball school because UCLA is
100%.
undisputed. Like there's not even an argument. Even if ASU beats them 10 days from now, which that should be a really good game. I wish I could go to that, but they will be the clear number one in terms of basketball schools in the Pac-12. They will not be that in the Big 12. They'll probably be third because they're going to be behind Kansas. And U of A fan can say that they're a bigger brand than Baylor, and maybe they are, but Baylor just won a national championship. You know, U of A has been very consistent. Like I'm not trying to hate on U of A's basketball program, but Baylor is a more recent national champion. They have the coach who just won the national championship. And the other thing is for U of A, the schedule is a freaking grind in the Big 12. Like you could argue maybe that prepares you better for the tournament. Like I don't know, like people say Gonzaga isn't prepared enough for the tournament, but they've made the championship game twice, and like if you make it to the championship game, like I just don't know how.
You're prepared for the tournament. And U of A
Yeah,
made it to the Sweet 16 last year, and I mean they did lose. Yeah, they lost to
they
Houston.
lost to Houston.
Yeah.
Guess what? Who's going to be in the Big 12? Houston.
Yeah,
Texas
Houston's
Tech.
another one that's like a very prominent basketball school now. Obviously, they were just number one in the country a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't really understand that from a U of A perspective. You still have a competitive enough programs in the Pac-12,
Right.
and you get to be the top dog, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Oregon obviously hasn't
They've been
been
bad
much
this year,
good, but
yeah.
it's still like
San Diego
schools
State
that
coming in, they'll be a good
schools who
program.
have at least been prominent at some point in the last 5 years and are very capable of getting back to that point. That's
Well, and
kind
the
of
other
what the
thing,
Pac-12 is.
yeah, and the other thing from so that's why I'm not trying to make a broad brush statement here. Like this is not all U of A fans. This is just some that I've seen on Twitter that they're like, oh, it's going to be so difficult changing between regular TV and Amazon, and I just don't buy that. Like, and
Not at all.
yeah, I just don't buy that at all. And it's funny. You look at this is from a tweet from Stuart Mandel, and he says, this is quite the prediction from our end SPJ on Pac-12's media deal. Would not be keen if a Pac-12 fan. And then all the comments are like Pac-12 fans being like, actually, this would be pretty sweet. Like,
Yeah.
so
That's what was funny is like,
yeah,
what's wrong with this? And it's, I don't know. All I'm looking through it, the lens that I'm viewing it through is the lens of a fan that has gotten to watch like 3 or 4 games every year
yeah,
because every other game is on the Pac-12 network and there's no accessibility to the Pac-12 network.
yeah.
Like I'm just excited to be able to watch any game that I want from a
I don't even
Pac-12
have Amazon. I will buy Amazon Prime for this. Like,
and you could buy Amazon Prime and pay like $7 a month, or you could get a DirecTV. I almost slipped up there. A DirecTV membership and pay $100 a month on a 2-year contract just to get the Pac. Actually, I don't even think Pac-12 has or DirecTV has Pac-12.
no, I
think
don't think.
Cox is like the only provider that has Pac-12. So even if you wanted to go that route, you still have limited options. It's literally the least convenient network that has ever been created.
Yes, yes. Well, and the other thing for U of A, like the thing with these schools trying to lead conferences, like I kind of get it from Oregon and UW's perspective, in terms of football, like wanting to go to the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten, like, I don't think they're going to add anyone in the near future. Maybe like 5 years from now they will. But with the 12-team playoff that has 6 automatic bids for conference champions, I don't know why you would try to leave your conference to go to a better conference other than for a big increase in money. Like, I just don't get it. And the other thing with U of A, like, how many U of A kids that go there are from California? Probably like half their student body similar to ASU, right? So now you want to go to a Texas-based conference? What?
What school did you say?
U of A. Like,
oh yeah,
they probably have an extremely similar student body base to ASU, and so many of those kids are from California. And so it's like, oh, if you're the school president, you're like, oh, okay, let's go to this conference because it's a better basketball conference, even though it's a Texas-based conference. I'm saying this as an ASU fan. If I were a U of A fan, I don't know why I'd be like pining to get to the Big 12, but that's just me. You know, maybe they have a better explanation. But anyway, hopefully this deal gets done, because I just don't want to hear about conference realignment stuff, at least for the next few years. It'll happen again, of course, but I hope it happens. And, you know, maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but I'm just not that worried about Amazon, especially if you also have some of the other big primetime games on another regular TV channel. And then maybe you still have some of the late games on ESPN. I think that's the best of both worlds. And maybe you make some more money than the Big 12 and the ACC. So, you know, maybe we're being too optimistic. Who knows? This could look stupid in a few weeks, but I am not opposed to that option. So anyway, sorry if you're U of A fans listening to this and upset at us.
I'm sure there's a lot of them.
I'm sure they're just tuning in all the time. All right. Well, with that, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, ASU has nabbed a few more recruits, gotten a few more transfers, and tonight ASU basketball playing at San Francisco. Hopefully they can enter the U of A game with just one loss. So, you know, it's been a while since I've said this, but things are actually kind of looking up for ASU right now in their main sports. So good times. And Colton, I don't know when the next time we'll record will be. Probably either next week or into the new year. But either way, Merry Christmas, and to everyone listening, Happy Holidays. And yeah, that'll conclude this episode. And go Devils.